Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well, the Japanese wanted it, now they have it. What? The Russians are going to smack them. Remember, it was not the Russians who, how should I put it, threw the first stone or cast the first rock or whatever you want to call it. It was Japan who did it. So you should always remember that. Why Japan inserted itself in Russia's business with Ukraine. It didn't have to, but since Japan is under US occupation still, it does what Al Capone orders them or suggests. So what happened? Somehow, and it's very strange, the United States of America, which has a budget now voted of $886 billion for the next year, doesn't have Patriot missiles. Ran out. So somehow Ukraine needs them, but the United States of America doesn't have them. Raytheon or Lockheed Martin somehow did not receive orders for that. So the United States of America told Japan, hey, why don't you give us some Patriot missiles and we're going to give them to Ukraine. And Japan said, yes, sir. Hi. That's what he did. Okay, well, hi, Al Capone, son. All right, or Sama, because Sama is even better than son. Sama. Yama. Anyway, so Japan agreed to give United States of America Patriot system so US can give it to Ukraine. Obviously, the Russians are very upset about it, and now they're threatening Japan, or at least warning Japan with very bad actions. What could those be? Remember, there is no peace treaty signed still between Russia, Soviet Union, Russia now, and Japan since 1945. So let's see what this little article has to say. This article comes from Reuters. It is from December 27th, 2023. Russia warns Japan over providing Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. And we have here the very smart Maria Zakharova, the spokeswoman of the foreign ministry, Lavrov's ministry. A move by Japan to provide Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine will have, and I'm quoting, grave consequences for Russia-Japan ties, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said on Wednesday. So why is that like that? Well, I will show you two maps so you understand first the Kuril Islands, or as the Japanese call it, the Northern Territories, and I will explain what happened in a few words. So here we go with the Kuril Islands. So this is Japan here, the one in whatever this red color is. And this is Russia in Yella. Yella. Now here is the Kuril Islands. You see right here by Hokkaido Island, right here. So that's what the Americans, yes, the Americans have the red one. Let's put it nicer. The Americans own the red stuff. The Russians own this little part right here in the northeast of Japan. These are the Kuril Islands, the Northern Territories. Remember, this right here, Sakhalin, is right, it's Russian. It's no problem with that. It's right on the tip. But these guys cry for this one. They say they're theirs. I will tell you what happened with that one. And a better map, the same. Here it says ownership of these islands in dispute Japan and Russia. There's no dispute. The Russians claim they're ours, and that's it. All right. So what happened? And this is Sakhalin. What happened in the Second World War? At one point, the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians were losing, and therefore the countries that were winning looked strategically what territories they should claim, conquer, grab at the end of the war. So they were preparing for facing one another. Soviet Union, Great Britain, and the United States of America were not, they knew what they were supposed. I mean, no offense here, I introduced Great Britain in this one just because it was United States and Soviet Union. But because I'm an all-inclusive. I like diversity and inclusion. I included Great Britain. Great Britain did not take anything, but let's put it this way. It was the United States of America who took, and Soviet Union. They were the big guys at the conference, but they needed Great Britain islands and their territories. At that time, they had an empire, but what happened with that empire? They lost it. Why? Well, you won against Hitler, but you lost your empire. And you bankrupted your country. Excellent deal, I guess. Who made you do this deal? Oh, no, Russia, what's the name? Hitler would have been worse. Well, you deal with this one. I think it would have been a third option that was not considered. Oh, you woke up, buddy? So, what happened? This were grabbing territories. Well, that was one reason, some say, and I think strategically it is, for the so fantastic D-Day landing in Normandy. That these guys are hailing like it was the turning point of the war, which was not. Which one was it? Fall of Stalingrad. Because from then on, the Soviets were coming, and they were liberating their territory. When these guys decided to open the second front in Europe, I remember they were coming from Italy as well, and from the Balkans. They were pushing forward, and in Italy and Yugoslavia and Greece. So when they opened in the Western Europe, the front, they did it for the same reason, to grab territories, to stop the Russians in between, in the middle, because the Soviets, my bad. I deserve to be punched in the face real hard for that. Soviets, you want to do it? We meet in downtown at, 2 p.m. and don't bring gloves, just sturdy fist. So anyway, here it is. And these guys came and fought, and they reached Berlin at the same time. I mean, these guys were allowed to take Berlin, by the other guys who were trying to take it first, whatever. So in this same time, the Soviets said, oh, how about we take over Japan, since these guys dropped the bombs over there. We can't let that happen. So they intervened in the past, I don't know, 2-3 weeks of the war. They just landed in the Kuril Islands, in those islands, and they were going down to do the same thing to Japan, what the Americans did to Europe, to Western Europe, meet them in the middle. The Japanese delegation was before the atomic bombs, I think, they were dropped. They were discussing with the Soviets. They had a delegation in Moscow, if I remember correctly, trying to sign an armistice with Soviet Union. They didn't want to surrender unconditionally to the United States of America, but the United States of America said, bullshit, drop it, boom, next one, drop it, boom. They want to have the Japanese surrender to them unconditionally, than to have an armistice with Soviet Union behind, like this. So they dropped this. The next one would have been, I think, Yokohama, and they would go on and on. War crimes? No. So the Russians, the Soviets, another punch, meet you at 2. I deserve 2. You want to do left, right, or what do you want to do? Pam, pam, however you want it. So the Soviets went over there, and then the Americans took over, stopped, and the whole thing, and then they went in September 2nd, 1945. When I think the Japanese delegation, they signed some documents on that little USS bullshit warship. I think it was in the port of Yokohama, I think it was, where the Japanese signed their unconditional surrender. So and the Japanese says, hey, you took our Kuril Islands, those were ours. Without even looking how idiotic that sounds. They lost the whole country, the whole 3 big islands, right? Kyushu, Honshu, and Hokkaido. They lost their the whole country to United States of America, and they were crying for the Kuril Islands. Now you can say, well, that's theirs. How about the rest of your fucking country? Just to show you how weasels, and I'm going to say it with full responsibility, I'm going to use a term that I know Japanese don't like it. How dishonorable you are, that when you have those commemorations of the atomic bombs dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you do not mention the American dropped this, and don't even say it. Some dropped, it's terrible, oh my God. They don't mention the United States dropping that. Don't even dare. Instead of saying, no, that was a war crime, this is what they did. So that's very dishonorable. That means you don't have honor. You remember? Honor? No? Yeah, you became businessman when, Commodore Perry fucked you up in 1869 or 1868? Which one was it? Bombarded you shit in Edo, Yokohama. I think it was Yokohama in the border, in the same harbor. And then you say, well, we surrender. And then it was the Meiji Restoration. Meiji, who was what? The emperor. What did the emperor say in Hirohito in 1945? In the speech on the radio? I ask you to bear the unbearable. Sounds like a good deal, right? My God. Honor, bullshit. Honor my ass. Anyway, so here it is. I'm very upset with that because you can't have it both. So these are crying for the Kuril Islands, but they have the whole land, country lost to the Americans. Great. Because, why? Because the Americans are the good ones. But still, you're under occupation. What does that mean? That means not others doing to you. You do. You don't even look in their eyes. You keep your head down. So what are the Russians gonna do? It's done. Probably they're gonna bring more weapons in Kuril Islands, and who knows in other areas surrounding, like in Sakhalin, they're gonna bring more weapons, and who knows what? No more oil. Remember, Japan still buys, because it's allowed, has some waivers by the big boss, buys Russian oil, if I remember correctly. I don't know if it's gas or not, but I know oil they buy. Why? Because you see, when you have values here, but the same values, you don't use them here because these are your friends or something. So the same, Japan imposes sanctions on Russia because Al Capone told them so, because they own Japan. But when the Russians retaliate, oh, that's unfair. What are you talking about? So let's see what the retaliation will look like, at least based on this article. Relations between Moscow and Tokyo, already difficult, made by whom? I wonder, have deteriorated sharply since Russia sent tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine in February. Why didn't the relations between Zimbabwe and Moscow deteriorate drastically and sharply since then? Why not, I don't know, Bangladesh's relations? So who made you, Japan, deteriorated? You inserted your ass because of Al Capone in someone else's business. Unless you claim that you somehow are more virtuous than Zimbabwe. But if you're so virtuous, why don't you kick your masters out of your islands first? Zip it. My God. Japan has joined. Japan did not join. Japan was grabbed. You know better, right? It's Western allies. There's no allies. You see how these guys are? They're not allies. They're allies when they're supposed to rob someone as a group of very, very courageous and strong countries. Because, you see, courage is always in groups, in packs. And always to be a coward is fighting alone. Taking on the world alone, that's coward. And it's like, oh, man, cowardice. But having other guys jumping one, that's courage. So these are the allies. They're allies for you. If tomorrow Japan does something that Al Capone doesn't want them, all those allies from yesterday will be their enemies today. I can guarantee you that. Look what happened to Hungary. If Hungary will say, yes, sir, Hungary will be the perfect country. But if you want to change its culture, becoming a more inclusive and diverse country, and accepting all kind of alphabets in their society, that's fantastic. But since they don't want to, they are almost a democracy, not really, authoritarian almost. Last week, Japan said it would prepare to ship Patriot air defense missiles to the United States after revising its arms export guidelines. No, they had some policies and said, we do not do this. And America said today, you're gonna do it. Japan by tomorrow did it. That's how it worked. It was just like this. But look, these guys, after revising, oh, you know what? How about we revise that because United States just asked us 5 minutes ago to do it, and we're gonna do it. Who's in control? Right here, revising. Right? In Tokyo's first major overhaul of such exports curbs in 9 years. And remember, these arms exports guidelines I can have a feeling, my bold feelings, that it's only for United States of America, nobody else. So they can't export, but only just for this period of time, the United States allows them to do it. Although Japan's new export controls still prevent it from shipping weapons to countries that are at war, it may indirectly benefit Ukraine in its war with Russia, as it gives the United States extra capacity to provide military aid to Kiev. So Japan gives to the United States gives it to Ukraine, but those missiles were not from Japan. And the Russians will be like, no, they didn't come from Japan, they come from the United States of America, basically. So you fight with this guy, and that guy gets weapons from that guy, and that guy got weapons from those guys. Don't you think that those guys are also involved against you? You bet. And I'm quoting, the Japanese side loses control over the weapons with which Washington can now do whatever it wants, Zakharova told a weekly briefing. It cannot be ruled out that under an already tested scheme, Patriot missiles will end up in Ukraine. End quote. Such a scenario would be, and I'm quoting, interpreted as unambiguously hostile actions against Russia and will lead to grave consequences for Japan in the context of bilateral relations. End quote. Russia and Japan have yet to conclude a treaty formally ending World War II hostilities due to an old territorial dispute involving a chain of Pacific islands known as Japan, in Japan as Northern Territories, and in Russia as the Southern Kurils. Even before the conflict, Ukraine conflict, Tokyo had complained about increased Russian military deployments on the islands, which the Soviet Union seized from Japan at the end of the World War II. You know how to do that, but you don't put it in a context which makes the Soviets bad. And the Japanese good, because they just sold their country to the good people, to Al Capone. All right, my friends, so what do you think is going to happen? Economic, and the Russians will deploy rockets, missiles closer to Japan. Japan will be, Al Capone, what should I do? Al Capone is going to say, I got an offer to make, and I'm going to give you some weapons, and you give my sponsors, Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and maybe, I don't know, Rheinmetall from Germany, we're going to give these guys some work to do. They will have the biggest profits in their whole history. Why? Because the boogeyman is over there. He attacks you. He wants to attack you. See? He's deploying weapons, missiles, and you start history only from there. You don't go back to say, hey, what caused that? So here it is, my friends. Good job, Japan. Good job. That's what happens when you are a weasel. When you're a batch, you are a how do you call it? Vassal state. You do what the boss tells you. Japan doesn't have to do that. But what resources does Japan have? Zero. It has some, I can't remember what little things. That's all. They don't have resources. That means if United States of America again, like they did before Pearl Harbor attack, no coincidence, told them, no, you can't buy your resources from Indochina, you can't buy from there, you can't buy from that, because we say so. And then this guy said, you know what, we're going to kick you in the balls and we're going to take over. That's what they tried, but hey, they lost. So the same here. If United States of America wants a blockade on Japan, it's going to happen just like this. And Japan, from the fourth economy, is going to turn into the 50th or 150th? I think 150th, because Japan without resources has zero in anything. What are they going to do? Massage? So yeah, they're caught by the balls. Are they going to align themselves with the Russians? That means, again, you are someone else's bitch again. And Japan is not a weak country. The only thing is very weak in resources, and that's very important. Why do you think these guys are fighting for Russia? For resources. And eliminate a competitor and a threat with the nuclear weapons. An independent country. You see, all these independent countries are bad. Iran is bad. Why? Because it tries to be independent, out of the Al Capone sphere. You got North Korea, the same thing. Cuba, the same thing. Venezuela. Countries that don't follow the orders are designated as bad. And Everything they have, is not good. Democracy, no good. Economy, no good. People, no good. Reforms, no good. No good. Why? Because we say so. If Maduro tomorrow says, hey, you know what? You're here. It's yours. Venezuela, overnight, will have everything perfect. Like Argentina. That pimp sells Argentina to the customers. You'll see that. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.